All right, moving into phase 2. Phase 2 is what I call the peripheral phase. So the avatar or the mascot for this one is that of the student. The phrase that I want you to associate with this level of awareness is, there's so much I don't know. This phase is marked by a desire to do more learning and less explaining. So this is a phase in your life when there is a ton of new information coming in, and it starts to have a real impact on what you see and how you see it. So this phase is marked by discomfort. So if you are uncomfortable, just know right now that you are in the sweet spot to completely embrace and lean into this phase of awareness. Because discomfort, while it doesn't feel good, once you lean into it and stop retreating as soon as you bump into it, you come to a point where you realize all of your growth is on the other side of it. All your growth is on the other side of discomfort. All of it. And once you lean into it 1 or 2 times, you start to recognize that discomfort holds no sway over you anymore. You're not avoiding situations because they're uncomfortable. I did an entire episode on the way that discomfort sabotages your personal growth and your happiness. I'll go ahead and provide a link for that video in the description box below so that you can watch the video next after this one. This phase can happen one of 2 ways. It can either be a spontaneous aha moment that just falls on your head and floors you, but it's more likely that it comes about because you are begrudgingly making a decision to make things different because you are suffering too much at this point. You are tired of hurting, you're tired of the problem, and you have gotten to a point now where you're willing to put pride and ego aside and say, I just need something to give. You are just willing to do whatever it takes to find relief. You may not even know what it is that you're trying to get relief from. It just feels like a void, and it feels like it's sucking the life out of you. The turning point happens when you realize that this moment, right now, is your turning point if you decide to make it so. You begin to realize that you have always had a choice. It just didn't feel like you had a choice because the way that your brain works is it's going to make the quickest decision possible. It doesn't matter if the judgment it makes is accurate, it just wants to make it quickly. And if you practice making a judgment over and over and over, it physically changes the structure of your brain to prioritize that judgment above all others. It doesn't matter how inaccurate it is. This is your brain's way of creating a predictable world and conserving energy, and it's trying to keep you alive. It's in this state that you start making connections. You are now noticing patterns that you did not recognize before. Here are some signs that this is the stage that you're either moving into or the one that you're currently in. You're beginning to notice your thoughts and your feelings as they happen. You are now able to recognize more and more quickly after the incident or after the argument where you possibly went wrong, where you think your mind went floop and made an assumption, it miscalculated something, or is misunderstanding what the person was saying. Just because you have moments of misunderstanding, it doesn't have any reflection on you as a person. You're not a bad person for having misunderstandings. They happen all the time. The only difference between being conscious and unconscious, or being aware and unaware, is that you know that it happens. Another sign that you're in this state of awareness is when others correct you, your automatic or your default emotion is not one of feeling defensive or frustrated, because you're starting to recognize that what people tell you is useful information. And instead of getting angry at the person for what it is that they're saying, consider that when they are criticizing a behavior or something that you did, they're not criticizing you, because you are not your behavior. There is a difference. Another sign that you have peripheral awareness is when you are more likely to pause before reacting. The pause can be short, the pause can be long. The pause can be, I need to go to the bathroom, or I need to take a walk. When you pause when you're in a heightened emotional state, you're effectively voting for your highest, most reasonable self to make the decisions. And it requires more context before you're going to come to a conclusion. So it's not unusual to feel like I need more information before making my mind up. That is a great sign of growth. You can catch yourself in the moment and choose to respond differently. You're not going to feel like responding differently, right? You have to make the decision. The feeling comes after you've made the decision, not before. A really, really important sign that you're moving into awareness is that you start to question your perception and your outlook on things. Something that you can expect if this is a sign that you're moving through right now is that you might feel really uncertain and you're not sure where you stand on things that a lot of people know exactly where they stand on. That's okay. This is why you're feeling disoriented. Changing your mind is very disorienting. Think of the mind as being structured, being ice. When you are unconscious, you have the same predictable, routine, mapped out neural pathways firing off all the time. So when you start changing your mind about things, you are quite literally changing your mind, because the structure of your brain starts to change as you change your mind. You are making new neural connections. You are retraining your brain to come to different conclusions than it has historically. This goes back to the avatar. You're more willing to learn. You now see that your interactions with people are just constant opportunities for you to learn more information. But as you move through this phase, that feeling of disorientation will lessen. There are also consequences for this state of mind as well. So the one that I want to bring up first is the least happy one. It can bring up feelings of shame sometimes, because you start to realize your role and how everything has been going on. You might start having regrets about the way things have been. That's completely normal. You are going to start recognizing how many relationships have been impacted by this, how many opportunities you missed out on, how much time you lost or wasted doing this thing. Your brain is going to work through that, right? But don't fall into the trap of believing that you are now out of time. That grieving stage is perfectly normal, and it's actually necessary in order for you to move deeper into this phase of awareness. Tip number 1 is to adopt a less judgmental but a more curious attitude about why you do things and where your habits come from. Tip number 2, learn to tolerate ambiguity and seek out nuance in conversations. Listen to what people are actually saying instead of hoping that you can, trap them with their words and then win the argument. Winning arguments is often antagonistic to building relationships and prioritizing connections. If winning the argument or being right is the most important aspect of conversation or connection with you, it might be that you have a competitive nature, but I would go ahead and challenge you to peel back a few layers and look at how you feel about relationships, just to make sure that you're not being competitive at the expense of having relationships with others. Tip number 3 is to notice those moments that you feel like you're being tested and to make that your moment to do something different. Changing your responses in the moment is how you put into action all the little breakthroughs and insights that you've gained since you've moved into this phase. The final phase of awareness we'll be talking about today is the intentional phase. The avatar or the mascot for this phase is that of the alchemist. The alchemist takes what it has access to in the moment, and transmutes it, changes it into something that is of higher value. We could call the trademark of this phase the honeymoon, because this is when things start feeling really exciting and really novel, and you see potential everywhere you look. You feel this renewed sense of awe and inspiration, and even in the most mundane and commonplace situations, you're just like, wow, how did I not see this before? It's kind of like being born again. And it feels like you have reconnected with the most authentic version of yourself, or your inner child, if you like to use that language. So you remember the value of playing and creating and being in the moment and being goofy and silly and telling the truth. Here are some signs that this is your level of awareness. You accept people and conditions as they are. This is not a passive resignation where you're like, oh, I guess I just have to tolerate all this stuff. That's not what this is. This is more of an open-handed observation. It is an impersonal acceptance that quickly informs you of what is actually going on and what your best options are. Sign number 2 is that you embrace and celebrate boundaries because now you see them for what they are. Boundaries is not about denying access to other people out of resentment or to punish them. Boundaries is a knowing of what you advocate for and what is worth protecting. Once you see how valuable your time and your energy are, you no longer feel bad for preventing people from being able to squander your time and your energy. And because you have respect for other people's boundaries now, you're gonna have more positive, more helpful, and respectful interactions with other people. This accumulates into the quality of your thoughts, which, as I discussed before, have a very real impact on your body's inflammatory responses, on your immune functions, on your hormone balances. Your thoughts, the quality of your thoughts, impact the cells and the matter in your body physically. It impacts everything. Another sign is that your priorities are really different now. Your values have changed. You might feel a little bit disoriented and lost as you abandon old values and having it established your new ones. You're less likely to be tolerant of abuse and gaslighting, and you're not going to be afraid of speaking up or being challenged because now you see that the consequence of not speaking up and being authentic is unacceptable to you. Another sign is that you now entertain uncomfortable questions and ideas with greater ease and readiness. The quality of your relationships is definitely going to improve. And that feeds into my next sign, which is that you are now much more selective about who gets your attention. So you're no longer available to nurse petty grudges. You no longer seek out situations where you are going to come out on top at the expense of somebody else. You're more interested in collaboration and you feel more connected to everything. And that feeds right into my last sign, which is you now become concerned with the bigger impact of your decisions and your interactions. You become a steward of other people's time, money, and talents because you see them as the irredeemable commodities that they are. When you take someone's time, you see that you're exchanging their life for whatever it was you gave them for that time. And once you have respect for other people's time and your own time that way, it completely changes the way you interact with other people. So what do you think? Is there another level of awareness that comes after being intentional and being the alchemist? I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments. Before I go, I'm gonna leave you with some parting questions that you can use as journal prompts or otherwise reflect on if you feel like you had a lot of breakthroughs through the content that we covered today and you wanna continue that work a little bit more. Which phase of awareness do you think you're in right now? What are you doing to move into the next phase or get the most out of the phase that you're in now? And which of these tips do you think that you're gonna apply? And most importantly, when are you gonna get started? Right now? Right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.